China panic. U.S. cruise missiles hits Chinese warship near floating barriers in South China Sea. In a significant escalation of tensions in the South China Sea, the United States has reportedly launched a series of cruise missiles targeting a Chinese warship in close proximity to strategically important floating barriers. The incident has raised concerns about the stability of the region and the potential for a further deterioration of Sino-American relations. The U.S. has warned China over deploying missiles in the South China Sea. The U.S. has warned Beijing that there will be consequences over its latest militarization of the South China Sea, following reports that it had recently installed missile systems on islands in the contested waters. CNBC reported Wednesday that in the past month, China had installed anti-ship cruise missiles and surface-to-air missile systems on 3 of the Spratly Islands, an archipelago west of the Philippines that is partly claimed by various countries including the Philippines, Vietnam, and Taiwan. We're well aware of China's militarization of the South China Sea, White House spokesperson Karine Jean-Pierre told the press, Reuters reports. We've raised concerns directly with the Chinese about this, and there will be near-term and long-term consequences. The South China Sea has long been a hotspot for territorial disputes and geopolitical tensions. Multiple nations, including China, Taiwan, Vietnam, the Philippines, and Malaysia, lay overlapping claims to various parts of this strategically vital waterway. China, in particular, has been assertive in its territorial claims, building artificial islands and military installations in the area, which has drawn strong objections from neighboring countries and the international community. Floating barriers are an integral part of the territorial disputes in the South China Sea. These barriers, often made of steel and concrete, are deployed by various nations to mark their territorial claims and deter other vessels from entering disputed waters. They serve as physical markers of sovereignty and can be a source of friction. Different countries have conflicting claims in close proximity. The recent U.S. missile strike targeted a Chinese warship operating near one of these floating barriers. While the exact details of the incident remain somewhat unclear, it is reported that several cruise missiles were fired, resulting in the sinking of the Chinese warship. The attack is said to have taken place in international waters, but its proximity to the floating barrier has raised questions about the legality and potential consequences of the action. The international community has responded with a mixture of concern and condemnation. Many nations have called for restraint and a peaceful resolution to the ongoing disputes in the South China Sea. The United Nations has also urged all parties involved to engage in dialogue and adhere to international law. China has reacted strongly to the U.S. missile strike, condemning it as a provocative act and a violation of its sovereignty. The Chinese government has vowed to take appropriate measures in response to what it sees as a dangerous escalation by the United States. The United States, on the other hand, has defended its actions, stating that it was a response to perceived threats and provocations by Chinese military vessels in the area. U.S. officials have emphasized their commitment to freedom of navigation in the South China Sea and a call on China to respect international norms. The missile strike on a Chinese warship near floating barriers in the South China Sea is a concerning development that highlights the ongoing tensions in the region. It underscores the need for diplomatic efforts to resolve the complex territorial disputes and reduce the risk of military conflict. The international community must continue to engage with all parties involved and work towards a peaceful and lawful resolution to this long-standing issue to ensure stability in this strategically vital part of the world. The world will be watching closely as events in the South China Sea continue to unfold, hoping for a peaceful and constructive resolution to these disputes. The installation of the new missile systems would bolster China's reach in the region, allowing it to strike vessels 295 nautical miles away and cruise missiles and drones within 160 nautical miles. CNBC reported citing an unnamed source connected to U.S. intelligence. CNBC reports that the systems were installed on Fiery Cross Reef, Subi Reef, and Mischief Reef. Since 2014, China has built artificial islands on top of reefs and rocks in the heavily contested waterway. Those islands have become increasingly militarized, with the installation of runways, missile batteries, and other infrastructure. If the latest reports are confirmed, it would be the first time Beijing has deployed missiles in the Spratlys. The deployment marks a major escalation. Eric Sayers, a former U.S. military consultant, told Reuters, "When China sees that it can get away with these types of actions with little cost, it only makes it more likely they will keep pressing," he said. A 2016 ruling by the Permanent Court of Arbitration ruled that China's claims to the South China Sea, parts of which are also claimed by the Philippines, Vietnam, Taiwan, Malaysia, and Brunei, had no legal basis. China dismissed the verdict as a political farce. The Philippines on Sunday accused China's Coast Guard of installing a floating barrier in a disputed area of the South China Sea, saying it prevented Filipinos from entering and fishing in the area. Manila's Coast Guard and the Bureau of Fisheries and Aquatic Resources, BFAR, strongly condemn China's installation of the barrier in part of the Scarborough Shoal. Commodore J. Terriella, a Coast Guard spokesman, posted on the X social media platform, formerly Twitter. The barrier blocking fishermen from the shoal was depriving them of their fishing and livelihood activities, he said. The Philippine Coast Guard will continue to work closely with all concerned government agencies to address these challenges, uphold our maritime rights, and protect our maritime domains, Mr. Terriella said. The Chinese embassy in Manila did not immediately reply to requests for comment. China claims more than 80% of the South China Sea, overlapping with the exclusive economic zones of Vietnam, Malaysia, Brunei, Indonesia, and the Philippines. It seized the Scarborough Shoal in 2012 and forced fishermen from the Philippines to travel further for smaller catches. China allowed Filipino fishermen to return to the uninhabited shoal when bilateral relations were improving markedly under then-President Rodrigo R. Duterte. But tension has mounted again since his successor Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. took office last year. Philippine Coast Guard and Fishery Bureau personnel discovered the floating barrier, estimated at 300 meters, 1,000 feet, long, on a routine patrol on September 22 near the shoal, locally known as Bago de Masinloc. Mr. Terriella said 3 Chinese Coast Guard rigid-hull inflatable boats and a Chinese Maritime Militia Service boat installed the barrier when the Philippine vessel arrived, he said. Filipino fishermen say China typically installs such barriers when they monitor many fishermen in the area, Mr. Terriella said. The Chinese boats issued 15 radio challenges and accused the Philippine ship and fishermen of violating international and China's laws before moving away upon realizing the presence of media